Hey everybody, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dr. Scott Keller. I'm the owner of Synergy Chiropractic Spine and Joint Center here in Lincoln, but been a member of CrossFit Lincoln here for a few years. And Phil has asked me to lead you guys through some mobility exercises. So what we're going to do is we're going to dedicate this month to the hip. Mobility in the front of the hip is vital in a lot of CrossFit movements. A lot of you are aware of that. A lot of you probably feel like you have really tight hips, lack of mobility in a squat or other aspects of CrossFit. So we're going to talk about just real briefly a little anatomy and why we're going to do what we're going to do and why it's important. So right here we have my spine with the pelvis attached. So we're concentrating today on the front of the hip or the anterior chain, hip flexor muscles basically. Now when we say hip flexor, you know, we can get pretty complicated as far as what's the true hip flexors, and there's multiple muscles that do flex the hip and become tight in the front of the hip. With a lot of us in today's society, if we sit all day long, we're in a constant shortening of those hip flexor muscles, and so if we're not properly mobilizing them, they're going to impact our mechanics and how we move on a daily basis, especially when we're working out. So basically what we're going to talk about today is two primary muscles, the rectus femoris, which is the primary quad muscle going all the way up from your knee to the front of your hip, and then the iliopsoas muscle, which is kind of known as the primary hip flexor muscle. The rectus femoris is an interesting muscle because obviously we think of the quad as a knee extensor, but the rectus femoris muscle comes up and crosses the hip joint, and it attaches on the front of your pelvis on this little knob right here called the AIIS. Now why that's important is if our quads are tight, connecting to the front of my pelvis, it's basically going to shift my pelvis into an anteriorly tilted position. So if I would show you that on myself, is it might contribute to this forward tilt of my pelvis, putting a lot of compressive loads on your lower back. Maybe you feel like you always have lower back pain, tightness. It might be coming from a tight rectus femoris. Now deeper to that is the iliopsoas, which the anatomy of that muscle is very interesting in and of itself. So it's the primary hip flexor muscle. It attaches on the inner part of your groin or your femur here, crosses up through the pelvis, and actually attaches directly on your lumbar vertebrae. So if it's tight, which in a lot of us it is again, it's going to really impact the lumbar spine itself, also contributing to this anteriorly tilted pelvis and a lot of compressive force on the lumbar spine as well. So what we're going to do today is just show you a stretch that a lot of you are already familiar with and probably have done, but we're going to tweak it a little bit and change it a little bit and add to it a little bit. So it's kind of commonly known in the CrossFit world as the couch stretch, but I want to differentiate the couch stretch from a true iliopsoas or hip flexor stretch. So we're going to start with the couch stretch, which involves placing the foot up on the couch, a box, or against the wall like we do it in the gym. Couple important points here. This stretch, if you're tight in that rectus femoris, you are not going to actually get down to the layer of the psoas, the iliopsoas muscle. So although you feel a stretch in the front of your hip, more than likely that's just the rectus femoris. Okay, so this one is specifically concentrating on that rectus femoris. What we want to make sure we do with all these stretches is not hyperextend our lower back. We're just feeding into the problem of compressive loads in the lumbar spine. Okay? So what we want to do before we even start getting into the stretch is tighten our core a little bit. So kind of make that core tight. You can see how that rotates my pelvis back into a neutral position. Then I'm going to start gliding forward until I feel that all the way through the front of my hip down into my quad, okay? You don't want to be too aggressive with this, just nice light stretch, okay? You can either hold that for a period of time, which is called a static stretch. What I actually prefer and would like you guys to do is make it more of a dynamic stretch. So what I like to tell people is glide forward, feel that pretty good, mild to moderate stretch, hold for just 2 or 3 seconds, and then back out of it to the start position, always maintaining this core tightness. Okay, you'll feel the difference here if you keep that core tight as opposed to if you hyperextend and try to stretch. I can go a lot further and I'm really not getting an effective stretch. So keep the core tight, glide forward, hold for 2 or 3 seconds, back out, and repeat that 10 times. We're also going to add a couple more dynamic things to move this muscle and stretch this muscle in 3 dimensions as opposed to just 1 dimension. So what we're going to do next is, again, tighten the core, and we're going to rotate away and reach across my body. Now you're going to feel that pulling again in the hip flexor. I'm not shifting my hips at all. I'm just rotating at the spine. Okay? So I might do that one 10 times as well. So rotate, hold for 2 or 3 seconds, and then come back to the start position and repeat 10 times. And then the last movement I'm going to want to do is over the body, kind of a lateral bending motion away from this side as well. Okay, so I'm going to reach my arm up, tighten my core, and reach over, hold for 2 or 3 seconds, and then back and repeat up to 10 times. You're really going to open that hip up in multi-planes rather than just one plane of motion. Okay? All right, so that, once again, is the rectus femoris specific couch stretch. In order to hit the iliopsoas, we're going to take the flexion out of the knee. So by taking that flexion out of the knee, we're decreasing the amount of tension we have on the quads, and therefore I can get deeper into my hip. Okay? So I'm going to just keep my foot on the ground, same position, same exact principles, tighten my core a little bit. I already feel it pulling a little bit in my hip. I'm going to glide forward, maintaining this neutral position in my core and my pelvis, hold for 2 or 3 seconds, and back out. Repeat that 10 times, and then we're going to go through the same 2 motions. So to make it a little bit more what we call tri-planar 3-dimensional stretch, I'm going to rotate, hold for 2 or 3, repeat that 10 times, and then I'm going to laterally bend. And repeat that, once again, up to 10 times. Obviously, we're going to do both hips. And when you stand up, hopefully, if you do have a problem with the front of your hips, feeling like you're being pulled forward like this, hopefully this is one aspect to that that's going to free that front of that hip up, enabling you to be more in a neutral position here, which is obviously going to help your performance and just in daily life. So I hope this was informational. If you guys have any questions, just get a hold of me, kind of in and out of the gym, or you can email me at Scott, S-C-O-T-T, at synergylincoln.com, S-Y-N-E-R-G-Y, Lincoln.com. Thanks.